This is what a common sense Asian guy really think of Asmongold. Hey guys, my name is Dave. I grew up in China, came to US about 17 years ago as an international Chinese student. And I got my bachelor degree in civil engineering at UT Austin and became a proud US citizen later down the road. I currently run a small social media business that does production, activation for gaming companies, publishers, and I see a lot of debate recently online about Asmongold. By the way, just for the context, Asmongold is probably one of the most well-known American streamers in China, like especially in the gaming sphere. Everybody in the gaming publisher will know about him because he does a lot of reviews for games, and sometimes he will push a game to its peak. Sometimes it will just destroy a game. So he's notoriously famous within the gaming sphere in China, even though external internet is largely not accessible in China. But he's just really, really popular. And another thing is, I want to talk about to our Chinese viewers, who is Asmongold? Well, he is one of the biggest, most influential streamer, also one of the most polarizing figure on the internet. Whether you like him or not, one thing that everyone seemingly agree is that Asmongold does not really give a fuck about what he says online, and he just shares what he actually thinks. I think this is very similar to a lot of people who became really wealthy, but Asmongold especially became like this even before he was wealthy. But who knows? I think he stayed wealthy for well over a decade now. The idea is he's probably one of the most successful streamer in the Western Hemisphere. And on Twitch, on YouTube, on almost all the platforms you can think of, right? All the TikTok short platforms, you can see people clipping about him all the time. Now, what made him really controversial, he says whatever he wants because he doesn't give a fuck. And some people like that, and that's also what attracts a lot of people to him. Similar to Trump, similar to the Tate brothers, but in a different flavor. You will see one is spicy, one's maybe more Cajun. Who knows, right? Recently, Asmongold got in a bit of a debate with another online personality over the riot that happened in Chicago over the Memorial Day weekend. Now, I thought this is a great opportunity to do some reaction about the situation and share what I think of Asmongold and how his opinion is actually perceived in China. Now, first thing first, before we get into the actual substance, I just want to say that I've seen quite a few videos about people comparing Hasan and Asmongold, who's going to be more popular in China. Well, there are two scenarios. Scenario one, if nobody knows who they are, which in a lot of cases, nobody knows who Hasan is because it's just not popular in China. But if nobody knows who they are and they just happen to be two normal people in China, Hasan's going to be a lot more popular in real life because he's very tall and very good looking, right? Muscular, tall with a beard, very Western looking. So he will have a good time, right? In any Asian countries, not just China. Where Asmongold, let's just say there are a lot of room to improve. But again, I don't think that he cares about that on a personal basis, really, because he talked about in his video also, where he just doesn't care about female attention. That's really, I would say, okay on a different level. I guess I'm not at a level yet, but luckily I also have a great wife, so I don't really care about that either. But for Asmongold, I guess for a single guy to not care, that's pretty cool. I guess the world is evolving now. Now, let's come back to the issue, which is the context of what actually happened over the Memorial Day weekend. Over the Memorial Day weekend, there were a lot of chaos. I would say similar to riot now in Chicago. And this always has to be in Chicago, which is kind of weird. All the major cities, how the major cities are like that, and why is this things always allowed? I remember during the pandemic, there was also a lot of riots and incidents in Chicago, in big cities, almost in Austin, but I think that it wasn't as big. But even then, like all the stores were boarded up in Austin, where I live. I would say accidentally or coincidentally with Asmongold, we both live in Austin. Austin's a pretty cool city. But even a cool city like Austin, all the stores were boarded up during that time. It was crazy. And in Memorial Day weekend, Chicago had chaos again. And what happened was multiple gathering over the weekend, dozen arrested, several officers injured, and in broader weekend violence, 20 plus people got shot, including children. That is just crazy, anything that, by the way, this thing about United States is notoriously known across the world. Everybody kind of know what's happening now in US, which is not a good look, right? When I was a kid and everybody aspired to go to US to study and then to do technology, to work, because US was known as a shining hill, shining apple on the hill, right? Everybody wanted to go, wanted to come because it's so cool. But now, if you go to China or if you go to any Asian countries, all you hear about United States is all the chaos that's happening. I don't know what shifted the narrative. Maybe it's just true. There are a lot of crazy stuff that's happening. But anyways, because of the crazy stuff that's happening, so on X, previously known as Twitter, Asmongold, also known as Zach, posted his solution about this. He said there's a very easy solution for this. Bring in National Guard, run all of them up, and put them in forced labor camp. Shoot the ones who are violent and attack police. Done. You can literally solve this problem overnight, but we chose to allow these animals to run wild. Elon Musk reacted 100%. I think that's pretty cool to get a response from Elon Musk. Now, let's talk about his response, right? How this type of response is perceived in China. It's not perceived as, let me put it this way. If a lot of Chinese people have seen this for the first time, the thing that I'm pretty sure, because that's what happened to me, it's more of a cultural shock, is not whether this is correct or not correct solution, is that why is this even happening in the first place? And why is this not a common practice already? Basically, first of all, why are so many kids undisciplined enough or have the balls big enough to set fire in public and start shooting around and people are just dying randomly? And what is the police doing to allow this to happen, right? Like, what is the government and the police doing to allow this to happen in the first place? And why does it even take someone like a big influencer like Zach to bring this up, right? To even talk about it? It's not about his solutions correct or incorrect. It's just the shock that this is even being discussed and this is even happening, which is kind of crazy to say because US is supposed to be the leader of the free world, but it is. It's a really sad situation that this type of violence is allowed. This type of chaos is allowed in the United States. It's not being properly dealt with. So here's an issue, right? There's a guy called Flint Dibble. I think he's an archaeologist and it also went on Joe Rogan's show. But he said the increasing popularity of this sort of rhetoric should terrify everyone. And that's where the debate comes from. And he followed up with more, I would say, incendiary arguments. Not arguments, but just language. So giving final solution vibe is a terrifying look. Now, first of all, I already give my opinion of what Zach's proposed, which is his solution. So far, in the first two sentences from Flint Dibble, there isn't really a solution. It's just saying that, what Zach's saying about a labor camp, language or rhetoric is not acceptable. Now, from an observer standpoint, someone who's just a common middle class citizen who want to just live a peaceful life, I see this, and then who has a background coming from Asian countries, China specifically. When I look at this, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's common sense, right? First of all, why is this being brought up, and why isn't this being dealt with? And then when I look at this, what's wrong with this rhetoric? It felt like for the longest time, America has been very, very soft on crime. And then the rights of the majority have been forgotten for a long time. Like, for example, when I was a kid, I remember like growing up, we saw a lot of homeless people, really, really sad situation. They would die on the street. Like they would get frozen to death in the winter. I'm talking about in China, right? But when I grew up, like especially towards middle school, I think high school, you no longer see this homeless anymore. Especially in the city, the situation is completely solved. Very rarely do you see someone on the side of the street, either missing a limb, which is still really sad, but asking for money. And even then, like that's quickly taken care of. And I don't know what happened to them, but the most important thing is the city always is very clean and people can go about their day-to-day life without being heckled or harassed and just, go to work or go to school. Where in America, it seemed like it's the opposite direction. I don't know about how it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, but for sure now you see homeless everywhere. I live in Austin. If you go downtown to try to walk on Lake Austin, you smell piss, urine everywhere, especially under the bridge. Like under the bridge area, Lake Austin is a beautiful walk, by the way. Majority of the walk is incredibly scenery and incredibly awesome. But then every time you cross under a bridge, you just smell urine. like, which is disgusting. And I don't know why that issue is never solved, like, as normal people who actually pay taxes, obey the law, need to use those facilities. Who make those facilities happen, I would say the normal people, right? The middle class is being squeezed in a way where that's no longer the property or, the utility, the facility for the common folks, because it seems like it's taken over by homeless people. Or if you go down to 6th Street, which is the party street, they call it Dirty Six in Austin. I go to 6th Street quite often when I was in college. All the parties were held over there, Halloween parties. And again, it's like a mixture. It's so weird because it's like a mixture of party, clubs, and homeless people. And a lot of the homeless people, you just can't tell whether they're mentally stable or not. It's a sad situation that they're homeless, but most importantly, it's a safety concern. I would never recommend a person coming to the United States to go visit downtown Austin, especially by themselves, because it's extremely unsafe. You don't know what to expect. And then some of the homeless people will actually chase you. My parents still live in China, and my mom came once to visit, and she got chased literally on the street by a black person, just randomly, by a homeless black person. And she ran back home and told us about it. I think she outrun, or the homeless person stopped chasing. But that kind of stuff just should not happen in a civilized society. The fact that people are scared to visit United States as a tourist or go to any major city, So I think there's increasing reverse, like there's a reverse being pulled in a car, but on a national scale for law and order, right? For basic civilized society functionality. And everything is going backwards. There's more chaos, more crime. And I don't know why this kind of rhetoric is bad. The common sense would tell you that Zach's rhetoric is pretty straightforward. If somebody caused chaos, put them in jail. They should not be allowed outside of jail, right? And if they cause more chaos, more punishment should be imposed on them so they don't come out of jail. But Mr. Flynn Dibble is saying that this rhetoric should terrify everyone. I don't think so. I really don't. Because I look at this situation like, okay, well, yeah, common sense. I don't know why he needs to even talk about it, because it's common sense. And then he says, giving final solution vibe is terrifying. Look, this is very interesting because it's comparing what Zach was saying to Holocaust, right? To what happened with Hitler. And then that's such a weird way of looking at this. And it's so dishonest and insincere a comparison, because that's clearly not what he meant. He clearly was saying that these people should be put in jail or put to work. Because if you think about it, all these kids are just crazy people who are causing chaos. There's one common thing that probably, among all of them, which is lack of discipline or understanding of action and consequences, that the cause and causation, right? Like, that's probably caused by just lack of parenting or whatever the reason is. The society or the family have failed them to teach them that basic understanding or respect for, societal rules. So if that have been missing in their lives, and then we need to teach these people about this because that's how any basic society functions, then what can teach them? Well, jail and labor camp, right? So they understand good labor, they understand good work is what, make you prosper, what help you prosper, and what allows you to live in a civilized society. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the approach or the solution here. Given, again, at this point, that Flynn Dibble still hasn't offered any solution. It's just giving final solution vibe is a terrifying look. Hey, let's keep on reading. Anyone who thinks people belong in labor camp is subjective, a pathetic husk of human. You can't treat people like that and claim any moral authority. It's just more emotional outrage, I feel like. And also, in this sentence itself, any reasonable person looking at it from, when you're not trying to judge, just trying to observe, is like, this statement itself is claiming moral superiority, right? It's a very elite way of looking at things. What makes you think, to Mr. Flynn Dibble, that you have moral authority over other people to begin with to claim this, right? Because if you can claim that you can't treat people like that and claim any moral authority, is a statement in itself to say you understand what moral authority is in the first place. Now, I think we are all very humble, which is normal human being who living a day-to-day life. I don't think anyone has any more authority over others. That's why I don't judge and I respect everybody's political leanings. I think end of the day, it's just different philosophy to look at the world. But we can all agree a functioning society needs to have very basic agreement on law and order, right? If somebody break the rule and cause harm or terrorize the normal society, they should be put in jail and treated to the harshest environment possible. So learn a lesson. Or most importantly, they should be disciplined one way or the other, right? To understand like they cannot do this and then people need to live their lives. So this statement is actually just very arrogant, in my opinion. It's not normal. I think he probably doesn't even see this activity, this kind of statement, as a sign of narcissism. This is actually just a sign of narcissism, right? To think that you can claim moral superiority and then say that you cannot claim moral authority, but then I guess you can, Mr. Flint. It doesn't make any sense, right? And also, like labor camp, I don't know exactly what this word means. Maybe like back in the old days, in the Nazi era, it means like how the Jewish people were treated were horrendously, right? But nowadays, if you look at just the word itself, labor camp, what it meant to me was just putting people to work. Like in jail, they send prisoners to work. I think in China, what I heard on news is like prisoners in jail are actually learning how to make chips, which is insane if you think about it. Because if those people actually learned their products, the chips that they made, were used in real life and actually providing value to society, and when they came out, they actually get to go to a factory and work or whatnot. That's actually a really good transition, because a lot of the inmates when they came out of jail, I heard, have a hard time finding jobs. But if you're able to learn a craft and be disciplined to understand that hard work, a normal day work is actually good for society, actually good for you as a human, that I don't know what's wrong with that, right? Like, why is that so pathetic, to have that kind of opinion when it's proven to be working? And then let's read the next one. All the replies saying that such humans are not people shows why this is terrifying. You're actively dehumanizing your fellow people, which is what leads to freaking violence and atrocities. Discussing fascist rhetoric, learn more history, and grow some humanity. And see, I want to talk about this response right here. You're actively dehumanizing your fellow people. The thing is, what Zach was talking about in his response, he is talking about the criminals. And then I don't think anyone with common sense, because this is more of a common sense take, I don't think anyone with common sense consider criminals as fellow people. They're clearly not. They're clearly outliers of the society, and they're not considered fellow human beings in a way, right? Because if they are, they wouldn't terrorize their fellow people. In reverse, if we treat criminals as fellow people, do they treat us as fellow people, right? The people who just want to live lives peacefully, work, provide value to society, and then provide for the family, right? Because if we treat criminals as fellow people, but they don't, then how do you play this game? The fact that this is what a lot of people now call suicidal empathy, where you see a snake frozen in a winter and you let the snake in, it kills her entire family because you're feeling bad for the snake. We can all be empathetic to the sad reality of dysfunctional families that doesn't discipline or teach kids basic values in the society. But at the same time, the only way to teach them is not to be more soft on them, is actually to send them to jail and have them be disciplined with consequences. That's the only way to internalize, oh, I cannot do that. Because if I do that, I'll go to jail. And that's an unpleasant experience, right? That's the only way to do it. I mean, otherwise, it's just not fair to the normal citizens who work hard, provide value to the society, which provide a platform for a debate like this to happen, or conversation like this to happen. So, and I don't even know what fascist means, to be honest, and I'm not very political. But the idea here is you're actively dehumanizing your fellow people. I don't think Zach is. I don't think anyone are, right? Any people with common sense would agree that the criminals should not have the same right and should not be called fellow people, because they're not. They're truly not. They're criminals, and they should be put in jail. And then his last take is, I have locked it list threat to replies. I refuse to be subjected to disgusting, violent rhetoric this larger accounts bring in their wake. The very last sentence is very correct, right? If you have beef with a very large influencer, you're going to be what do you call it, ocean washed, right, by the fan base. That's true. I mean, there's no other way to look at it, and especially when your take is a big L, right? When your take is against common sense, like when clearly, if you look at the picture that Zach sent, and also everybody's seen this, right, over the weekend, the Memorial weekend, what happened in Chicago, like if this is happening, the clear solution is to have all of these people who perpetrate this type of crimes to go to jail and then never come out, right? Never come out unless they work hard, they produce something productive, and they understand that they truly understand they can actually work hard and provide value. That's when they're let out, right? By the justice system. But I mean, this is such an L take, and then you're for sure gonna get ocean washed by the fan base. And I noticed that to be a trend among the American society right now. I think the American society is getting way too soft. I don't know why it's getting soft, but I notice society is getting more and more gentle day after day. It's tracking the same trend, because I have to bring out this book that Ray Dalio was talking about in this book. It's called Principle for Dealing with the Changing World Order, Why Nations Succeed and Fail. Ray Dalio in the book are talking about US is on the decline, and it's tracking the same trend that he was talking about in this book, where principles of dealing with this world changing order. In the book, he said, to have peace and prosperity, a society must have productivity that benefits most people. And in American society, the most people is talking about the middle class, which take up right now about 51%. And I think that is going to shrink more and more with how the world works, because middle class is the least protected class, probably probably the most damaged class right now, right? Because you don't get any protection from the social welfare program because you just make enough to not qualify for any of those. You also do not get any benefits. It's climbing up seems almost impossible in the modern society, right? Especially with the AI coming up, you feel like you're not catching up enough. Only a small group of people who understand AI feel like they have a chance. Majority of the people that I know don't use AI on a scale that can prosper them. It's good for information, having conversation, or it's good for finding information easier, but it doesn't really prosper most of the people. And it takes a long time to learn. And it just feel like we're not protected. And you want to go to the park to walk, you feel like you don't know if you're going to get stabbed by a random person, or you want to go on a walk on Lake Austin, you feel like you're getting you smell urine and you can't walk in peace. Another thing is, look at East Austin. Right now, Austin price, by the way, Austin house price is unaffordable to people who live here for a long period of time. Right? If you try to buy a house, East Austin used to be known as the affordable area because it was largely just, I would say slums, but largely just really old houses. And people used to can afford them. Now, you can't even afford houses in East Austin, let alone any other area. If you want to buy a house in Austin, the only affordable areas are probably outside of Austin, right? You're looking at a suburb that's 30, 40, 50 minutes away from Austin. That's probably the only area where affordable housing is still building. But even in East Austin, the city is building affordable housing. And if you want to qualify for those, you have to be really poor. So it's kind of funny because the friend of mine was talking about they have to get a divorce in order to qualify for and to act poor in order to qualify for the house over there. But that's just so sad. The situation where from the bottom up, right? From the middle class can't afford housing, and yet everything's been provided to people who don't pay enough taxes, right? And then from the upper end, from the top side, again, I already mentioned, the AI is coming, and the middle class feel like they can't catch up. It feel like it's built for the elite. If you're a computer science, you understand, if you're a senior programmer, it seems like such a good tool. It's replacing all the junior level programmers. But for people who don't understand programming or don't understand how to talk to computer on a basic level, like me, I just feel left behind, right? I'm actively studying now, but it's the more I study, the more I felt, I should have studied computer science instead of civil engineering, right? Because everything else seemed like it's going to be replaced. So again, it just feels like the majority of the middle class is not being protected. Right? Everything that's being done in society right now is for the poor and for the rich, and middle class being left out. Not even crime is being taken care of. It's super weird. Right now, the society is super soft and gentle on almost all crimes in the US. Most people's rights are not being protected at all. And people work hard, pay taxes, obey the law. They're just normal people are being squeezed from the top and bottom. That's my take on this situation. Anyways, going back to this conversation, Flint Dibble said people don't belong in labor camp. Let's have first read Zach's response, right? Average people are tired of living under the anarcho tyranny that has been deliberately engineered across US. I think there was a section of his response that's talking about this. So let's listen to what he says about it, and then we can respond after that.
That their age of engineered chaos is coming to an end, that people are coming to their senses and they're realizing that we don't actually have to live in a police state because we don't have the police putting the people in state prisons. So I think that you have a growing animosity and a growing resentment with like just average people where they are sick of living in a minimum security prison in their everyday life.
You know, the surprising thing is, it's not a growing hatred towards this entire situation that's happening. My take is, why isn't this hatred there in the first place? Like, who's okay to live under this type of situation? This type of chaos and this type of crazy crime being perpetrated in a large public area would never happen in any Asian countries. Try to go to Korea and see if this will happen. Try to go to Japan or China. Like, this will never happen. That's why people live in peace over there. Like, people can prosper. That's why this nation grows so fast. Look at freaking Singapore. Imagine this happening in Singapore, right? How fast this type of chaos, first, it will never happen because people are actually civilized and criminals understand their crime will be punished, right? But like, it seemed like this type of stuff is tolerated by the American people. And then I don't know where. It's super against common sense to me, because America is known as democracy, and then the politicians are voted in place by the public. I don't even blame the politicians because they're useless as always. But what about the people who voted them in? How did that happen? Like, if I live my life 4 years in terror, where if every time I go down Lake Austin, I'm reminded of how stupid of a city I live in, I would never vote for the politician that, put me there in the first place. Again. But it seems like the politicians are in there for decades and nothing happens and they're still there. Now, I gotta say, Austin's a little bit better because Austin is improving all the time. Like, I remember there was homeless tents everywhere at a period of time, and that has been taken care of somewhat. And now they're popping out again, like pop-up shops everywhere. It's kind of like weird how these politicians are voted in place. I truly never understood that, So when he said this, it actually shocked me. I was like, but why is there growing hatred? Why wasn't this hatred there in the first place? Because, I don't like this since the very beginning. It's never cool.
They're sick of going to a McDonald's with bulletproof glass. They're sick of not being able to sit down at the Wendy's. They're sick of going to Chick-fil-A and the chairs are bolted to the ground so homeless people don't steal them.
By the way, that is such a sad situation, because my food was also taken once in an In-N-Out Burger before. I got food for 4 people and a homeless person just went and grabbed the food and stole it away. So it was kind of scary at the moment for me, because this was like 6, maybe 8 years ago, and then it was truly scary. Never happened ever once in my life, and then I hope it doesn't happen again. But it's kind of weird that homeless is just now integrated as a part of the society as a normal thing. It's never supposed to be a normal thing. If you watch one of my favorite shows, I watched Dave Portnoy's pizza review, and he watched a lot of his pizza reviews. He would just go outside of the restaurant and eat his pizza, right? And some homeless people will come up, act all crazy like they're clearly not mentally stable, right? And they would just grab a pizza, and then the way everything just looked nasty, and Dave Portnoy just interact with him because he doesn't really give a fuck, right? He's multi-millionaire, close to a billionaire. I think if not already a billionaire at this point. But yeah, he just doesn't give a fuck. However, normal people look at that. I don't think it's pleasant, right? It's not pleasant. It shouldn't be pleasant. And it shouldn't represent the United States of America. It shouldn't be like publicized or shouldn't be avid or spread as acceptable anywhere. Homeless situation need to be solved, and it's not a really difficult issue. I feel like if the city is investing already hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars into the situation is not solved, why not just offer all the homeless people a job somewhere? Hey, go quote unquote labor camp, right? Offer them a labor opportunity. If you want to come here, work, we'll pay you money to do to learn a trade. You can go work, right? And then you can go shower and then all that kind of good stuff. If you don't want to work, guess what? You're removed from the city one way or the other. offer them opportunity of decency. But if they don't want to take it, remove them, because those are clearly the bad actors, right? Like, it seems such a common sense take, but then it was never solved. And then this shocked me that there's a growing hatred, because I just don't know why this was never taken care of.
Or melt them down for metal. They're sick of it. They're tired of going to CVS and needing to speak with a customer service representative to have a tracking tag taken off of a candy bar.
You know, that's so funny. Actually, during the pandemic, it was so true, because in Austin, there was a Walgreens next to our house. They locked the toothpaste in behind the glass. You would never think the toothpaste need to be locked behind a glass door. But it was. And it's such a sad situation. Like, this would never happen in any grocery stores in China, right? Like, it's largely honor system too in China. Like, you buy items and then you put in a card and go check out. Nothing is locked like this, like crazy, like US. You go to Korea. I went to Korea for 3 months for a project. The city, doesn't matter what time it is, felt insanely safe and just awesome. People are nice, living their lives, even during pandemic, right? And Korea had one of the strictest pandemic rules, right? Just against everything. And even then, people were living a happy life everywhere, right? There was no chaos. Everybody's living their lives, you know, according to the rules at the time. We went to Korea. We were quarantined for 2 weeks and came out. The country was awesome. I love to live in Korea. It's the food is awesome too. Whereas in US, dude, toothpaste were locked behind glass doors. I mean, something to think about.
Like, we're just sick of it. We're sick of it. We're so sick and tired of it. And the problem is that really, and this is the issue, right? Is that every single person has to live with these consequences because we don't want to impose consequences.
You know what's so interesting? I think Asmongold should run for Congress. I don't know if he ever will, but he would run. And then he should be the common sense candidate. The only thing he would do, by the way, if anyone run as a common sense, I think there's a guy called Spencer. He was pretty cool. He's like, I'm gonna solve homeless problem in LA. To be honest, I would not vote for any politicians who don't solve day-to-day issues. All the politicians are crooks, every single one of them, right? In US, like there hasn't been anyone that really solved the issue that I care about as a normal middle-class citizen. Like, for example, homeless issues, right? Crimes on the street, get that solved, clean the street, make the city look like city. Like, that's number one. If you can solve that, I'm automatically voting for you every single time, right? Just taking care of that. Another thing is taxes, right? Or gas prices. The gas prices through the roof right now, right? Find a way to solve that issue. You got to vote for life, right? Another thing is the taxes, property taxes. It's crazy because if you think about, one thing that is against common sense for me is like, you buy a house in the United States, and then it's always being advertised that you own the land, you own the house, there is Second Amendment, you can protect your property against the tyranny of the government. But if you think about it, you never truly own a house in the United States. You buy the house, you pay to clean, and guess what? You have to pay property tax for life. The moment you stop paying, even though you never use the local services like the police, the whatever, which I think is really important, but they should find other ways to fund it, to be honest. But let's say you never use the local public services and you don't have kids going to school. You're still paying that property tax. And the moment you stop paying, you don't own the house anymore. The IRS will probably come take your house. Think about that for a second. Do you truly own the house, right? Like, you don't. You can protect the intruders, people who are trying to invade your house or rob your house or whatnot, but you can never protect yourself from the IRS. Like, your house will be taken away. Then if that's the case, how can you say you truly own a house? It's against common sense, isn't it? And then that's a society we live in right now. So I think if any quote unquote politician can solve those and then find a way to diversify funds to continue to fund the very crucial institutions like the police department, the fire department, without getting money from the normal citizens, I think and a school, I think that would be goated, right? That's common sense take.
On the people that are criminals. And so you are actively dehumanizing your fellow people. I want to let him know.
Okay, so that's the take, right? That's the situation happened with his response. He basically said, I wouldn't have to live like this. Pictures one of my posts was discussing. He already also talked about the context, what Zach was referring to. And then the only response Flint had was people don't belong in labor camps. I truly, any common sense people would say like disagree with this because we're not talking about normal people. This is such an unfair comparison, and either he's just being dishonest or just plain stupid, right? Like, because you can't be this insincere. Every common sense person look at the situation is gonna say, "Oh, Zach is talking about the criminals that perpetrating all this crime," and he just responded as, and he even specifically showed a picture here. I mean, I don't know how more specific do you need to be in this scenario to say, "Hey, we're talking about the criminals." And if Flynn Dibble just says people don't belong in labor camp, why not? We're talking about the criminals here. Why don't they belong? Where did they belong? In your home? Like, tell me. Give me a solution of where they belong. Right? Because these people clearly doesn't belong in a civilized society and they should be jailed. They're not being jailed. The politician letting them out for some reason, political reason that I'm not really interested in. But they just shouldn't be out ever. So Zach's response is why not? And then Flynn, well, why not? By the way, this is so funny why this is even being discussed. Sounds like such a stupid discussion, Sunrise from the east. No, sunrise from the west. And then why? And the next question is why? Like, it's okay. Anyways, Flynn Dibble. Oh, why not? You ever seen a labor camp? It's inhumane. You advocate to treat humans like livestock. So pathetic and disgusting rhetoric. You are EO if you think a large group of people are belonging to labor camp. It's a trash opinion. Again, this is continuation of the same dishonest starting point, premise of this conversation, right? Because Zach's talking about criminals and Flynn Dibble is talking about what large group of people, right? You advocate treat humans like livestock and a large group of people belong in labor camp. If this large group of people are talking about criminals, yeah, they don't belong in civilized society. They should belong anywhere but a civilized society. Put them in an island. You should be harsh on crime instead of soft on crime. Soft on crime never solved anything in life, ever. Like, think about your personal life. Have you ever convinced anyone by being soft? Never. I've never convinced anyone to do anything, right? I learned that the hard way. The only time somebody can get help is when they ask for help themselves. You can never help somebody. Let's just put it that way. And that's known to be a fact. Any common sense people would agree to that. But here the thing is, if you can't really help them, the only way to do for the criminals is to discipline them, right? And then either through jail or through even harsher punishment. So they understand not to perpetrate crime towards normal people. And then Zach says the only thing that's inhumane is allowing animals like this terrorize the public and hurt more innocent people, which I 100% agree. The only inhumane thing here in this situation is like the public's being terrorized and there's no solution to this, right? It seemed like they just allowed to keep on going with it. People are just allowed to shoot people randomly on the street for some reason, or set fire in public for no reason, push people in the freaking train on the train rack for no reason, train track. Empathy for the evil, apathy for the average person. If not a labor camp, what's your solution for dealing with violent, destructive criminals? This is a good question to ask. Again, like we asked the question many different times in this video, which is like, what is your proposed solution? Because so far, Flynn Dibble hasn't given a solution. He just been ranting about, it's not humane to treat criminals like criminals, which I don't understand why. I think if you perpetrate a crime, you have forfeited your rights, your human rights. About America is really generous about giving everybody human rights. It's a societal construct, but it's a generous construct, right? Because survival is never given as a right. Survival is always privilege, especially rights on top of the survival. It's always a privilege. Look at all the poor countries where nobody give a freak about human life, the value of human life. You're talking about they have rights, but like factually speaking, they're being murdered every day, especially in Africa, where all the nations that got into wars. So America is such a generous society that protects human rights, and we should cherish that because it's a privilege. Everybody should protect that privilege and then obey the law and order, right? So he says, his response is, I have no problem with prosecuting criminals. So that's exactly what Zach was saying. Prosecute the criminals, right? Send them to jails. Your inhumane labor camp solution has been tried and rejected as evil, filth it is. Your attitude belongs in the trash bin of history, but you rejoice at bringing more violence. You're pathetic. No, I think the quite the opposite. Any common sense people, again, I think will think this is quite opposite and quite lame. This is even being argued and brought up by Flynn Dibble, because he also blocked, as he mentioned here, he also blocked all the responses. Nobody can respond to this, and that's seen as a sign of weakness. Like, why don't you allow the public to join the debate, to join the discussion? Because then you can see if your take is truly a W take, right? The public will stand on your side because, not everything Asmongold says is right. He says a lot of crazy things all the time. But allowing a public discussion, well, it's always good. Then you can say, even though you're a very small influencer compared to Zach, you can still win an argument. But this is clearly an L take. Nobody agree criminals should have more right. Everybody agrees criminals should be put in jail. So this is just a very L take, and his actions speak louder than words because he blocked, all comments on this. So we can't really comment on it. It's just weak. But anyways, that's the common sense take on the scenario. The overall summary to Flynn Dibble is, what is your proposed solution to this insanity and chaos, right? I don't think there's anything but putting them in jail and then putting them in quote unquote labor camp to teach them a good thing, good value that come out of hard labor. And again, I don't know whether putting anyone in labor camp is quote unquote human and inhumane. I think that's not up to us to judge. The truth of the matter is, does not matter, right? If you commit a crime, you forfeit any decency granted to you by a civilized society. All right. And I think anyone will agree to that. Just again, I think Americans getting too soft, just like Ray Dalio was saying. And then people are not focused on STEM anymore. Science, mathematics, technology is more focused on let's not treat the criminals inhumanely. How about let's focus on, defend Earth from the upcoming meteor strike. I heard we're due for a meteor strike, we have been due for a few thousand years already. How about come together and then support Elon Musk with moving human to Mars or something like that? Because this way we protect humanity, So anyways, my take on this is I will never vote for in any election unless a politician promised to take care of the things that we talked about just now: the energy price, safety on the street, remove all the homeless, drugs in the city. But maybe it cannot be solved because just American culture is just too generous, It's too nice to people who are underprivileged. The only solution might just be AI. Because look at all this scams, fraud that are happening within the government. Maybe remove the politicians the only way and just put AI in charge. That sounds kind of scary, but I don't see any other fair way, from a common sense standpoint. A human, by human nature, is going to think about his and her own good above anyone else. The last discussion point is who is actually more popular in terms of opinion. So we already talked about Hasan and Asmongold by look, right? But opinion-wise, Asmongold will be infinitely more popular than Hasan. Ever will be in China. In fact, I don't think Hasan will survive living in China for more than a few months. Well, he will probably live well because he's rich and he's tall, he's handsome. He'll live well, he'll find good partners and whatnot. But most of Hasan's reasoning and logic is actually deemed straight up crazy by the public and considered too privileged, right? It's a very, Chinese people hate elitism take on things. And when you listen to Hasan, it feels like a lot of the take that he has is very elite. Because he lived a very privileged life. He was born in a very, very wealthy family. And then his upbringing, his entire career has always been privileged compared to normal people. And everything that he talks and the way he lives is polar opposite. He preached a very different lifestyle than his personal lifestyle, and that's been frowned upon. That has been frowned upon, and it is frowned upon in the general public's eye. Not just in America, in China, it's more extreme. So, compare those two. Who's going to be more popular in Asia? No, Asmongold is probably going to be infinitely more popular in China. Hasan probably won't even become a streamer. Probably going to be canceled on day one. By the way, we're talking about a culture that's largely leaning more towards Hasan, right? Where, for example, in China, abortion is a common occurrence. Gun is 100% banned in public. Looks maxing, to look handsome, to look good is common. It's good. It's accepted. Men are looking pretty instead of handsome in China. It's very K-pop culture, right? In a culture where Hasan would be largely welcomed, common sense would tell you, if you actually grew up in China, understand Chinese culture, his opinion will not be accepted because it's against common sense. It's against anything that people were taught, learned, and then brought up with. But Chinese people are largely, just common sense people who believe in a functioning society should prioritize the rights of the majority, the law-abiding citizens over the criminals. That's just our take. That's the common sense take to this entire shenanigans. It's so interesting that this is even being discussed and then crime is not being handled, still not being handled. And there is a huge election going on in Texas right now. Truthfully, I will not be voting at all this time. I will not be voting for any one of them, right? Because not a single person is talking about removing the homeless from the streets, cleaning up the streets, cleaning up the drugs, and make sure that downtown doesn't smell like weed all day, doesn't smell like crazy, crazy stuff, urine. You don't see human feces. Like, how about getting that solved, right? How about just making sure gas price is not crazy, and then we'll vote, right? Any politician who promise and actually deliver that, they got my vote for life. We just want day-to-day life to be smooth so we can work and, provide for our families. Let me know what's your thoughts. Leave a comment, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye for now.